Morning crew, today we're going to be demonstrating how we're going to do cross cuts. So I have this here 2x4 Douglas fir, right? 2 because of 1.5 inches this way and 4 because of 3.5 this way. Okay, we'll talk about dimensions another time. This isn't a lesson on dimensional lumber. But I always look at it, you can see the end grain here looks like rings on a tree, right? So if you could picture how it's milled as we discussed earlier in the year, right? And you can see that the grain is going this way. So I always picture when the grain is going this way, this is a rip cut, right? If we were to cut this linear along the entire length. So I picture like ripples on the board, the grain, like ripples in the ocean or water. I picture doing rip cuts this way, ripples, rip cut. Across the grain is a cross cut, right? So in order to be able to do that, I'm going to demonstrate a cross cut saw, okay? Sharp pencil, right? Because I want a nice clean line for our guide. Pencil sharp, mine sharp, right? And a tri-square to be able to scribe a straight line and a tape measure, right? So let's check it out. So for purposes of this demonstration, I like to be able to use a clamp to help keep this close to the table, so you can open it up by holding both handles and spinning it. Right, so that's closing it. And I always want to make sure that this gap here is about 1/4 inch before I start making individual adjustments, right? So I take the clamp, I leave the two of them parallel to each other, and then open, right, and close. Loosen one up, and now I could tighten, okay? So if I were to cut lefty, I want to be on this edge of the board. So this side would be clamped, and the part overhanging the tabletop is the part that I'm going to be cutting. Okay, but since I'm righty, I'm going to set this up and configure it the other way. Okay, but the first thing we're going to do is take a tri-square and make a nice clean mark, one line, okay, because we're going to cut off that much of the board. So I'm going to have this overhang the table by a couple inches. You don't want too much because then it might not be as sturdy, right? So we want just a couple inches past, because I'm going to be holding the board with one hand and using the crosscut saw with my right hand, okay? I'm avoiding going through knots for now, okay? It's not really favorable. Sometimes knots are real pretty to see in a project, but you don't want to see them being cut through, right? Because the grain is relatively irregular. And hard to cut through. So we want to be cutting on an angle down and away from us, right? The teeth are pointing away from us, right? So we're going to be cutting down and on an angle. We're going to pull back and push down on an angle, right? We're going to keep our hands clear from the blade, never underneath. So I actually like to use similar to culinary, where you do a bear claw, okay? I'm going to do the same thing, but use my finger as a guide to keep it from going over this line, right? But I want to make sure that my blade is straight, not beveled, right? And I want to make sure that I'm cutting straight along the line. So what I'm going to do is avoid going over the line left or right, okay? So we don't want to cut like this, flat on the board, right? We want to cut on an angle, like either a 60-degree angle, maybe to a 30, but we want to try our best to follow the line. Now notice my thumb and my fingers are not in the way. And I'm cutting backwards and reverse to get a little groove started. And then once I got that going, I'm going to hold the board firmly I'm making sure that the blade is straight this way. No rush, just get a steady groove. We're going for technique, not for speed, not for power. All right, that comes later. Okay, so you can see that the cut is relatively straight and that our cut is relatively clean along the line.